Okay, so we looked in the last hour how to do some basic calculations with percents. We looked briefly on the percent increase and decrease, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. We mentioned the rate method of percents in the last hour. There are some applications where using the rate method is just easier. In fact, a lot easier. So let's take a look at some applications where we would use that rate method. One of them is a commission. Now I realize you guys are CNC and you're going into sales. But even in the machining industry, you could end up being a purchaser, or you could end up being in the sales side of the machining industry, or dealing with customer relations. And even outside of that, there are some companies that are going to an incentive-based pay program where there is a component that's very similar to a commission in it. So let's take a quick look at commission. And commission is basically a straight commission or pure commission. Mostly occurs in sales, where you are given a pay strictly based on a percentage of what you do, what your production is. So let's say you get an 8% commission. If you have a month where your sales are, let's say, $63,000 in sales. Figure out your pay for the month. You take your $63,000. You could do 8 over 100 equals blank over 63,000, but normally we make it quick by just making the 8% into a rate of 0.08 and we multiply it out. 63,000 times 0.08 is 5,840? 5,040? 5,040, okay. Yep, you're right. 5,040. So that's your pay for that month. Now, pure commission, straight commission like that is pretty simple. It's just find that percent of the sales. But there are a lot of other commission scales out there. For you guys, in a production setting, it would most likely be some sort of a base plus, where you'd receive a base pay. You might receive a base hourly pay of $12 per hour. Now, I realize most of you are looking at doing a lot better than $12 an hour, and you will. But this is with an incentive on it. $12 per hour plus 1% of production value. So let's say that during that hour, you produced $530 worth of production value. What your pay for that hour is going to be is that $530 times 0.01, your 1% as a rate, which is $5.30, plus your $12. So that hour you made $17.30. Now, obviously, a company's not going to figure it out hour by hour. They're going to figure it out on a week-by-week basis. They would figure out an average production value for the week and then make your hourly rate off of that. But you can see you get the general idea there. Or they might have something set up like your pay is $13.20 per hour plus 2% of production value over 500. So what does that mean? Well, let's say that you have, just looking at an individual hour again, let's say you have an hour where you have $680 worth of production value. Are you going to get 2% of that? No, it's over 500. So you subtract 500 from that, you get $180. That's what you're going to get your production value bonus on. So it's going to be that times 0.02, which will be $3.60, plus your $13.20, you're at $16.80 per hour. Making sense? Now, something I've got to warn you about, just because I've seen it happen a few times. If you ever were to get into a straight sales position, the insurance industry was notorious for this, and they have regulated it a little bit to kind of lessen the ability for this to happen, but it can happen. Let's say that you're offered a sales job, and what you are given is you will get 12% of sales with a guaranteed $1,000 weekly draw. A guaranteed $1,000 a week doesn't sound so bad, does it? Well, let's look at this. Say in week 1, you have sales of $3,000. Your commission is at 3,000 times 0.12, your 12%, which is going to give you 360 bucks, correct? What are you going to get paid? $1,000. But here's the problem. You only earned 360. The other 640 is what they call a draw. Let's say in week 2, you're picking it up a little bit. You sell $7,000. Well, times 0.12, that is now $840 in commission. You're going to get paid $1,000, but you only earned $840. There's another $160 a draw. You are now up to $800 in draw. Let's say week 3. Week 3, you hit your stride a little bit. You make $9,000 in sales times your 0.12 or 12%. That is $1,080. Woohoo! You're over $1,000. You get a bonus that week, right? No, guess how much you get paid? $1,000. Where'd that other $80 go? Pays back the draw. That draw sounds like a guaranteed paycheck, and it sort of is, but it's a loan. And I've seen this happen to a few people where they get, mostly in the insurance industry. Okay. Where you end up 6 months down the road, you realize that insurance isn't for you, but you owe the company 10 grand. A lot of companies actually do, you don't get paid. If you don't make sales, you don't get paid, period. Or they give you a base, a couple $100 base per week for whatever. But this was big back in the 90s. That guaranteed draw was huge, and it got a lot of people in trouble. They started regulating, I think, in '94 or something like that, didn't they? Yeah. Yep. I know in the insurance industry now they have to guarantee you a certain amount per week, period. But just something I wanted to point out. It's a nice application of our percents, but it's also something I wanted to point out too as a life lesson. Most of them didn't really have interest, but it's still money you owed them. If you ever wanted to leave the company and you're still in the red, that money is due now. Right. And if you don't pay it now, then there is probably some serious interest on it after that, I'm sure. Let's take a look now at the other side of it, investment. Let's look at simple interest. Simple interest is where you either take out a loan or you put money into an account, and you're going to earn interest on it, but they're not going to pay any interest or charge any interest till the very end, or until there's an action on it, whatever. The formula for simple interest, the amount of interest is equal to the principal, which is the amount of money you start with, times the rate, that's our percent as a decimal again, times the time, which is the number of years it's going to sit there. So let's say that you are going to invest $3,000 at, let's go 8%. I realize 8% is really high right now, but you think it is borrowing $3,000 at 8% too, if you'd rather do it that way, for 3 years. Figuring out how much you're going to have to pay back at the end of the 3 years, you first have to find the interest. The amount of interest is going to be that principal of $3,000 times a rate of 8%, so 0.08, times a time of 3 years, which is going to give us $720. So that means at the end, you're going to pay back $3,000 plus $720 is $3,720. Now, realistically, simple interest usually doesn't go on 3-year loans. Usually something shorter. If you ever go into business for yourself, or in some cases just for personal things, you might take out a short-term loan. I run a construction company outside of here. It has happened to me more than once where I get into a large job and 2 weeks is up, it's payday, and I haven't finished the job and I haven't been paid from a customer, so I don't have the money to make payroll. So I go to the bank and say, hey, I need some money for a little while. I might need $4,000 to get me through payroll until this job is over. And I might say, okay, I'm going to have it for 90 days, or let's make it simple. Let's say for 3 months. And they say, well, we're going to charge you 6% interest. So at the end of the 3 months, I got to pay it back. I got to find out my interest will be the $4,000 times what goes here? 0.06 for the 6%. 3 months. Now we said time was always in years, so that's going to be 3/12, which gives me $60 in interest, which means at the end of the 3 months, I pay back the $4,000 plus 60, or $4,060. Even though 6% is a relatively high rate, see, it's only $60, but it's because it's only a very short period of time, a fourth of a year at 3 months. $60 is more than worth it to keep your employees happy, by the way. Trust me. Keep them working, yes. Yeah. Now let's go back to that first example where it was, what was it, $3,000, 8% for 3 years. Simple interest does not usually run for 3 years. Banks don't like to do that. They don't like to have it sit there. Normally what they'll do if it's more than 6 months, or sometimes maybe even up to a year they'll go, but anything more than a year, definitely, they use what's called compound interest. That just means they add in a little bit of it, every now and then they add in the interest, and then from there on, that's part of your balance. You get interest on top of it. Hence the word compounding. You're getting interest on top of your interest. So let's say that we're going to call this one 8% compounded quarterly. Quarterly is how many times a year? 4. 1 quarter or 1/4 of a year. So let's look at this now for quarters. For the first quarter, my interest is going to be 3,000 times 0.08 times 1/4, a quarter of a year, which is going to be $60. Which means I start the second quarter with a balance of 3,060, which gives me an interest of $61.20. See, I've already got more interest because of interest on top of my interest. So that means I'll start quarter 3, adding the $61.20 is now $3,121.20. Now, how many times would I have to do this to get through 3 years? 12 times. 4 times a year for 3 years would be 12 times. I don't want to do this 12 times. Let's look for a shortcut. Now look at this here. First of all, that is 0.08 times 1/4, which would be 0.02. In other words, each quarter I'm paying getting 2% interest or paying 2% interest, however you want to look at it. Now we just talked about this earlier with the percent increase. The $3,000 is the starting amount. That's 100%. We ended up with, I'm going to put this over here, $3,060. That was after adding the 2%, the 0.08 times 1/4. So this is 102% of the starting amount, correct? Makes sense? So what that means is at the end of the first quarter, I'm at 102% of what I started with. So I make 102 into a rate, which would be 1.02. I get 3,060. I do 3,060 times 1.02. I get $3,121.20. So each quarter, all I have to do is multiply by 1.02 to get the ending balance. That shortens it up some, but I still don't want to have to do that 12 times. In math, if we're multiplying by the same number over and over again, we have a shortcut for that, which is an exponent. I do 3,000 times 1.02 to the power of 12 to do it 12 times. Oops, that's not what I want. This one's what I want. 3,000 times 1.02 to the power of 12. So $3,804.73. Now before we had what? 3,700? 3,720. So you can see here we got almost $85 more because of the compound interest. Now that was just over 3 years. I'm going to take a couple minutes here now, and I realize a little bit of an older group, but how many of you here are under 21? A couple. 25? Just a couple. Well, I'm going to be preaching just to a small portion of the class then today. Those of you that are older, you're in the same boat I am, don't worry. But it's an important lesson. It's an important lesson to show you guys. It's worth it for just a few of you. Right now you're in school and you're probably living kind of cheaply. Driving in your older car or sharing an apartment or sharing a home with someone, maybe even still living with your parents, whatever. You're living as cheaply as you can to get through school. But once you're out of school and you get that first good job and you're getting a decent paycheck, a lot of people, they want to buy a new car, a new truck, or buy some toys like four-wheelers and snowmobiles, or move into a nicer place. But what if you stayed living like you were? Keep that old car for a year, maybe 2. Stay living in the crappy old apartment. Keep your roommates, whatever. How much money do you think you could save up that first year? Quite a bit, yeah. Think you could save $5,000? Probably pretty easy. I'm going to put down $5,000 because federal government says you can put up to $5,000 a year in an IRA, a retirement account. So let's say you're 22 years old. Oops, that's not a dollar amount. Oh, we're not going there yet. What age do you think you could retire at? What, 30 seconds before death? Right now, Social Security is saying people my age won't be able to retire till 67. I'm guessing by the time I get there, it'll be 68, 69, probably a little bit more. That's full. You can still drop partial, I think, at 62, but we're not going to get into the merits of how Social Security works and stuff like that. So you're looking at 45 years. If you have money put away, and I'm not talking about putting it in the bank, because it's safe, but it's not a great investment. If you go to a professional investment counselor, inflation usually outpaces the bank. If you go to a professional investment counselor and have them help you invest your money, what percent a year do you think you could average over 45 years? Yeah, I was going to say, over the last 170 some years since there's been a stock market, The average 40-year gain or annual gain over any 40-year period, this is during periods that even include the stock market crash of 7 years ago, and periods that include the Great Depression of the 1920s and 30s. Still, the average annual gain over a 40-year period is between 11 and 14%, depending on how it's invested. So that's a pretty decent gain. So let's go conservative. I want to say like 11 or 12%. You guys tell me. To 10% just to make sure? Okay. So let's say you put that $5,000 away. Now 10%, at the end of every year, you'd have 110% of what you started with, right? 100 plus 10. So this would be 1.10 or 1.1. We're just going to compound it every year. We're not going to go quarterly or anything, just adding in the interest every year. And before you punch this in, anybody want to guess as to what that's going to come out to be? Way more than 70,000. 364,452. By the way, if you put that up to 12%, it'll pretty much double that. Right around 700,000 or 800,000. That's just one $5,000 deposit, and 10% is relatively conservative. Now, let's say you decide to wait 10 years. So you know what? I'm just out of college. I want to play with my money. I'm going to buy a new truck, and I'm going to get a four-wheeler and have some fun. Go out and party with my friends. Oh yeah, it takes you 10 years to settle down, and now you're 32 and you realize, okay, maybe I do start thinking about retirement or kids' college funds or whatever. So now instead of 45 years, you only have 35 years. Again, before I hit equals, anybody want to guess? $140,512. Less than half, almost down to a third of what you would have got if you did it 10 years earlier. Now, what if I am 42? Yeah, I know. What if you just wait till you're my age to start and decide, oh, wow, I'm 42, man. I'm like just over 20 years from retirement. I should start thinking about this. I only got 25 years left to go, assuming I can still average 10% with only 25 years to go. This is going to make me cry. 54,174. Notice, about 1/7 of what you would get. If you start at 42, you get about 1/7 of what you would have at 22. That's huge. Now, since we've got a few minutes, I'm going to show you guys this. Like I said, for those of you that are my age, it's not too late to start. This is also good information to have to show the kids, just to pound it in their head. So let's start out at 22. I'll go 21. Some of you guys will still be 21 when you get out of here. We'll take this up to like 67 or 60. Don't want to go up to 196. Hopefully none of us live that long.
Yeah.
Maybe some of you guys want to live to be that age, but I really don't.
I no desire to get there. By that time, they might find the phone for you. Yeah.
With my luck, I drowned in it. So we're going at just a 10% interest here. Anybody want to guess before I let it go? It's not going to. Yeah, 4,800,000. We're going to do this quick. It's $5,000 a year from 21 to 68. 4,800,000. You could be. You could.
Years from now, or 45 years from now, that might be enough.
Possibly not. You're right. There's a chance that it won't be. But here's what I really wanted to bring up here for those of you that are looking at me saying, I still want to play for a couple years. I'm going to put these side by side. Let's say you decide, you know what, screw that. I'm going to play at 30. I will start worrying about retirement. How bad do you think it does you? You're down to just $2 million. So wait till you're 30. Still $2 million isn't bad, right? What if, however, you had said, okay, you know what, I'm going to be responsible. From 21 to 29, I'm going to put away that $5,000 a year. And at 30, now I'm going to say, screw it. I'm good. I'm going to party with my money for the rest of my life. Anybody want to guess? Way better off. In fact, I could probably come up here and do it one more year. So now it's just from 21 to 28, you're putting it away. And at 29, you're starting to play with all your money for the rest of your life. This guy starts at 29 and saves every year for the rest of his life. He'll still never catch up. Wow. Let's try it one more year. Let's see if we can push it back one more year. Here, I'm pretty sure it's going to be really close to even.
You're still getting interest on for all those years you put the $5,000 away. Then.
Right here, it's about almost exactly even here. It's within 100,000. So this one here, yeah, you're putting $5,000 a year away for only 7 years. This person is putting it away for 40 years. And you're ending up with the same amount. Again, don't like to preach, but something to think about. Anybody want me to put in a scenario for different ages? Do a what if I start at 58 or?
Oh.
Okay. Well, like I said, even if you're older like I am, it's still something to teach your kids or whoever. I mean, this one is just, it always blows me away. Like I said, these 7 years right here are worth just as much as the next 40. Something to think about. Yeah, I was going to say, you're 28 years old, you're still young enough to have fun.
Yeah, $5,000 a year to party.
Yeah, you got an extra $5,000 a year to mess around with. Can you imagine how much fun you could have on an extra $5,000 a year?
It pays for most of the screws.
Yeah. As long as you don't dip into this, yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, you got to put that where you can't close that.
And you know what? If you wanted to, you save for an extra couple years here and start partying at 30. That way you've got this extra cushion put away to use for those things if you want to spend a little more or whatever. I mean, it really is phenomenal.
And what type of investment would that be?
That would be, you'd go to an investment planner. They might put you in mutual funds or individual stocks or even probably a mixture of mutual funds, stocks, and corporate bonds, things like that.
Yeah, but that can also go down too.
Yes, they can go down. From my investments.
Buy gold and silver on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can invest in precious metals. Yeah. You can invest in precious metals. Those almost never go down significantly. Now, I mean, I've had years where I've lost as much as like 40% in my investments. But I've also had years where I've gained 60 or 70%. I've still averaged out a good 12 to 13% gain per year since I've started investing. Okay, in your little books. You're looking at units 22 and 23. Again, just the odds. Talking about interest and markdowns and markups and discounts and stuff. That does wrap up Unit 1, which means Tuesday you will have your Unit 1 test, just so you know.
That stuff's gonna be on there?
There'll be a couple problems like this on there.